November Rain might be the most powerful stand because of what its power comes from. On the surface, it seems like a close-range stand with a trade-off. Jodio can't control the movement of its attacks, meaning he can't phase them through material or throw things to reach farther, but the range is wider than normal, and it rains enough to protect him from anything getting close. Fitting the song, it's a power to let Jodio shut people out, so the rain can beat anything down while acting as a barrier. No number of bullets or close-range knives can reach him, and as long as he doesn't just leave the stand out, he doesn't have to worry about it being attacked much from above. But there's nothing else the stand can really do. It doesn't have any other powers or effects aside from brute physical attacks. Its punches are just thrown in the form of rain. Having a stand can allow someone to boost certain actions by putting their agency behind them as physical power. Most stand users, who treat their bodies, all the muscles and senses at their disposal, as parts of their arsenal for solving problems, get a humanoid form to apply their will through in a straightforward way. But characters who rely on a specific concept have to apply that force through their ability. Instead of a stand punch, Toru gets the proportional amount of force to worsen the calamities knocked into people, and Yasuho can nudge the outcomes of cause and effect to proportionally move close enough things just a bit closer and skew the environment in her favor. Jodio believes mechanisms are what the world runs on, so he approaches problems through them, and feels trapped because he sees his own potential in terms of the wider world's rules of cause and effect. That's why his force is applied through rain, an inevitable form of weather from the water cycle that happens abundantly in Hawaii, falling down due to the natural law of gravity. All he can toggle is its source, like a water tower, so the drops move straight down, and there's nothing he can do himself to have power over anything beyond his given 3-meter radius. This powerlessness is always on his mind, and wears him down, which is why in some fights, he tries to find external factors that can boost his range for him. When fighting the cats, he uses momentum from swinging so his rain falls at an angle, and when fighting Bobby Jean, he could climb the stall and phase his stand through the roof to build up a stream of water more practically, but instead, we saw that he'll easily get overwhelmed and keep lashing out relentlessly, knowing that if he isolates himself enough, it will give him the freedom to expand his range just a bit further. Even though it shows how his train of thought can only worry about so many potential threats before the strain causes him to snap, he also rejects the easy choice of only letting November Rain fight things already beneath it, for the chance of aiming higher. But if he sees human agency as trapped by the hierarchy of mechanisms, then to Jodio, the way of increasing your power is by exploiting mechanisms to climb above them. What he'd need is just an initial advantage, a mechanism on his side that gives him the agency to then climb higher, so he's not only a bearer of mechanism consequences. And November Rain might reveal how he already has one. When a stand symbolizes a person's affinity for solving problems, it tends to symbolize any distinct approaches or reliable outcomes. Joshu's approach is to get his screws loose like a berserker, regardless of what he's trying to do, and Kira consistently and meticulously disposes of people. An approach-based stand, like Nut King Call, grants the user temporary effects they could not perform before to expand their possible outcomes, whereas an outcome-based stand, like Killer Queen, which symbolizes how Kira regularly and violently makes people disappear, lets them pull off their action more effectively to expand their possible approaches. The effect of an outcome-based ability is permanent, but the effect of an approach-based ability can grant the user a whole new source of power. But most stands are somewhere in between, where they can be interpreted as having varying levels of approach and outcome-based traits, since they're simply designed after what their user's agency stems from. And most characters have both a unique perspective and a reliable skill set, including Jodio. November Rain may take after his way of looking at the world, but just being granted a stand might have given Jodio the additional source of power he needed to change his potential. Because if he only had the power to be at the mercy of the hierarchy, the way it's symbolized would only let him thrive over what's presently beneath him. He would have fun, but instead, his stand expands his current power by being slightly taller and always standing above his present height. November Rain is a feedback loop. His stand is confirmation from the universe itself that as long as he tackles things in a steady order, he has the agency and opportunity to keep climbing higher than wherever he is now. Jodio will always have an avenue over anything in the hierarchy that's a bit higher than he is. Damo Tamaki pointed out that the strength of a stand user is the character their stand symbolizes, rather than the ability itself. Stands are the representations of people's strengths, causing a feedback loop that can make them stronger or wear them down with feedback if they're unworthy. So even though Jodio Jodio's direct ability is just brute force, the agency it's tied to says that whether he's unstoppable is in his own hands. The outcome of any conflict just depends on whether Jodio climbs carefully, and that's why November Rain might, in context, be the ultimate stand. At the very least, he contrasts with Josuke, whose power-up at the end of JoJolion was mostly symbolic. Aside from firing tiny creams, Go Beyond mostly just embodies how Josuke has immunity to Wonder of You, and isn't much use against other abstract powers unless they share the theme of running on chains of cause and effect. Josuke was born despite the tightly wound chains Toru had been trapping Morio under, and being a result from Toru's schemes, Josuke had the potential to count as a consequence of Toru himself, and be exempt from the targets of Wonder of You's reactive power. He just needed to value what really mattered about his identity and learn to embrace his source of strength, which, since he had been born free of Toru's calamity, is the idea of stunting something or removing traits to create wiggle room in bindings. Since it's a problem-solving affinity for working with what you have, it stemmed from the spin, so if he embraced it, he would automatically lean into the spin and gain a power symbolizing the resulting expansions of his agency. But while Go Beyond's theming is to deny causality, all it really lets Josuke do is fire high-power bullets and cancel chain reaction powers. Soft and Wet can do a lot, in theory, but a stand in practice mostly just represents the character of the user, which is what decides how the stand can be used in quick-second conflicts. And Josuke's symbolism, much like Giorno's, was so varied because his strengths of character were that circumstantial, meaning he could only use a fraction of his ability premise at a time. Jodio is the exact opposite. His stand can do nearly nothing, but just like how the lava rock revolves fortune around it, November Rain signifies that Jodio always has some path on his own terms to victory.